In our previous tutorial, we set up a scoring system for our 5 snakes. Our ultimate objective is to get an aggregate score for all of the snakes over 10 races. We then need to decide if there's been an overall winner or a draw scenario has occurred and display the result accordingly. In this tutorial, we will create a counter to restrict the number of races to just 10 races, or 10 slithers as I've chosen to call them. Once the 10 races have elapsed, the scores will be reset, the counter will reset itself, and then the process can start again. So that's our objective here. Let's start taking a look at how we're going to achieve this. Okay, so up here I've created a slither number keeper, and I've also added slither number. Exactly the same concept as what we did with the scores. So the slither number keeper is just another null object. Again, it's going to be a reservoir for the number of slithers that have elapsed. Slither number, exactly the same as we did before with the indicators for the scores. It's just another extrude with a text spline placed inside it, which have subsequently been grouped into a null. It's as simple as that. The setup is exactly the same for this as it is for the other 5 up here. So there's no real need to go over that again, I don't think. Okay, so let's just dive into the Expresso. The first thing I need to add is a compare node, so I'll copy one from here. In fact, I need 2 compares, so I'll get both of those. Take those up there. As before, I'm going to frame all, grab a hold of this top one up here. In fact, it'll be the second one. I'll grab a hold of that one. Bring this over to where the time node is. Select these. View selected. On this occasion, I could actually use either the frame or the time here, but I'll use the frame. So I'll just put that into there. Frame all. Grab a hold of that and drag it back over here. So I've got that there. Select these and frame selected. Zoom out a little bit so that we've got a bit more to work with. So I've got the first of my 2 compares wired up now. The second one I need to bring in, just bring this over here so we can see where we are. I need to bring in our slither number keeper for this, and as before I'll bring it in there, make it a little bigger, and it's going to be coordinates position Y, and then I'm going to connect that into my condition there. So what am I comparing my time to, or my frames to? Well, it's not going to be equal to 120, it's going to be equal to 0. I'll explain why in a few minutes time. And the compare here, I need to be using greater than or equal to, and it's 10, because we're looking here at having 10 slithers, the best of 10 slithers, and getting the aggregate score. So we don't want to go above 10 here, so that's what we're comparing the slither number keeper to. The next thing we need is a bool, and we need it to be an AND, so we don't need to alter its function. And we're going to plumb both of these into our bool. So what's going to be happening, this is the first part of it. We're saying when our frames are 0 and our slither number is greater than or equal to 10, that must mean that we've come to the end of 10 races. So that's what we're finding out there. So if this bool is satisfied, we know that we've come to the end of 10 races. That's the first little piece of this done and explained. Moving on from there, we need a monoflop. And we're not going to use this in the standard way. I'm simply going to be using the monoflop here as a counter. So it's used in a completely different way to what we've used it before. One thing I do need to put in is a reset. That's going to be important. Now the reset, we're going to be plugging this into. That's that done there. And we're also going to add, we don't need a state, we just need a counter. We don't even need the out for this. We don't need any of that, we just simply need the counter. So we've got it that far. Now how are we going to trigger the monoflop? Well, the monoflop is going to be triggered by this compare, because we're saying here that once our frames have got to 120, we're incrementing our scores. It's also the case that the slither counter needs to be incremented at exactly the same time as the scores. So that's what we're using there. So that's going to trigger our monoflop. So our monoflop needs to be set up as a one-shot monoflop, because on this particular occasion we need it to receive a 1 or a true output from here, which is going to trigger it and make it work. So we need to set that up as a one-shot monoflop. So that's that done. We don't need to worry about the time or the duration here. It's not important on this occasion at all, because it's not used as a timer. It's simply going to be used as a counter, as I said earlier. So that's where we need to get to there. Now the next thing to do is to bring in the slither keeper, slither number keeper again, and we need to go into our slither number here and go into slither, which is the text object. Just make those a little bigger so that we can see them. In fact, I think we'll just bring that across a minute and just view or zoom to 100% so that we can see absolutely what we're doing. Okay, I've got those two there, so I can put my counter here, come down to object properties, select text, same thing up here, coordinates, come down to position Y. So that's those two bits set up. So then the actual height of the slither keeper here is going to be updated or incremented by the counter value that's coming out of the monoflop. So every time the monoflop is triggered, the counter will advance 1 digit. So that's how the monoflop actually works. And this is where the monoflop is actually quite a versatile node. You don't often see this kind of stuff being used. Most people would think of it as just a timer, but it's not. The counter can be very, very useful to you if you need to keep on totaling things up. So always bear in mind that the monoflop has that function. And that is the first part of this complete. I'm not going to run it yet because there's something that we've got to do in the score setup here to really make this work, because obviously once 10 races have elapsed, or 10 slithers have elapsed, we've then got to say when we next zero the timeline that we're going to reset the scores and the slither counter at the same time. Well, the slither counter we've dealt with because we've got this boolean here and that's got its reset in there. So when our 10 races have elapsed, that's going to be reset, so the counter will go back to 0. That's fine, that's all taken care of, but we still need to reset the scores. So the way we're going to do that is get another condition node. We're going to drag these out of the way here, move these over there, and we're going to place this second condition node after the first one. Disconnect these from there for now. We're going to use our monoflop to switch a compare. So I need another compare. So I need to bring that in there. I'll just move these out of the way so that we've got a little bit more space in there. Just bring that into there. So this counter value here, if this counter value is 0, equal to 0 is what we're going to use in here. So we know that when this is 0, our scores need to be 0 as well. So that's what we're going to do there. So when that's 0, we're going to switch this. In the condition node here, in input 3, I'm going to leave that as 0, and I'm going to put this output into the input there. So all the time we're in a situation where we can allow the scores to increase, no problem at all. We'll allow this to be passed. But as soon as the scores need to be reset, we'll switch to 0 and we'll reset the scores. So the last thing that we need to do is just plug in the output into our text and into our position Y of the scorekeeper for SID. Bring those back up there where we had them before. And that completes it. That's everything that we need to do sorted out there for the expression. So we'll recap it. We've got the slither keeper here, which starts at 0 point. we've compared the slither keeper there to being greater than or equal to 10. So if its height is greater than or equal to 10 centimeters, that's what we're looking at there. Our time, we've said if the time is 0, and we've brought in the bool here and looked at both of these. So if we're greater than, our height of our slither keeper is greater than or equal to 10 centimeters and our time or our frames are 0, then that condition will be satisfied. We need to reset this monoflop and reset the scores at the same time to 0. If that's not the case, once we reach the end of each race, we're going to trigger the monoflop, causing it to increment by 1, thereby allowing us to indicate that another race has elapsed. And we're going to add that number that comes out of the counter to the height of the slither keeper and obviously display it in the text there. So that's what we're about there. Let's just see if it works. We'll just click on here just to make sure that everything's ready, and we'll set it in motion. And it does work. You can see that the slither number has clocked up 1 race, and that's exactly what we wanted to happen. The scores are all there as they were before. If we reset and do another one, and it clocks up again. So that's working absolutely fine, and that's what we want to happen. Now, at the moment, if we go back into the Expresso, the only thing I've wired up so far is Sid's scorekeeper and Sid's text. So I need to copy these two across into the other Expresso expressions for the other snakes. Other than that, this piece is just on its own. I don't need to do any more with that. That's only done once, obviously, because there's only one number anyway. There's only one slither counter, so we don't need to do multiple ones of those. But I do need to copy these, so I'll stop the tutorial there, and then, as always, come back when I've done that work that I need to do. So I'll see you shortly. So welcome back once again, and as before, I've wired up and copied and wired up the compare and condition nodes and placed those into the algorithms for the various snake scores. If I just click on the monoflop up here, you can see where the cables are coming out of the counter output here to be used to reset the scores for all of our snakes now. So that's done. That's completed that. Let's see if it works. I've advanced the races through to the 9th race, so just to save time really. So if we just reset and then play our 10th race, let them slither across the screen. And that completes all 10 races. Bonnie is the clear winner on this occasion. And if I reset, all things being fair, we should reset everything on the scores and the slither counter. And it works perfectly. So that proves that our Expresso expression is fine. And that just about completes this part of the tutorial. The only other thing I said I would do is just to have a brief discussion about the scoreboard. What I'll do exactly as I did with the snakes, create a new file. We'll put it into the side orthogonal view. It will only be a brief discussion as to how I did this. So what I did, I got some rectangles, put a bit of rounding on them, reduce their sizes to a sort of sensible level, get the rounding down a little bit more than that, just make it a sensible sort of size, get those down to about somewhere there, brought that one up somewhere here, and then I just copied so that I ended up with 5 of these. And then I took one more down for the slither value at the bottom there and made that slightly smaller. Set that up like that. So that gives me the 5 rectangles. The next thing I did was, using a Bezier spline, I just created the outline for the scoreboard, leaving enough room for the names of the snakes on the left hand side. Just bring this in here. Take that one down there and then move it up. this is very rough. Okay, so that's given me the basic sort of shape for the scoreboard there. Just tidy this up a little bit. I also put roundings on all of the corners, but I'm not going to waste time doing that now. It's not really worth it for this. So I got that little bit of it done, and then all I did, selected all of those and made them editable, selected everything, came up to mesh, conversion, connect and delete, did that so that I've got a single spline, and then dropped it into an extrude. I then gave it a bit more depth. This, I say, very, very rough. Caps, put a fillet cap on it, constrained that there so that we ended up with something like we've got here. So that gave me my basic sort of idea for my scoreboard. I probably need to just move those up a little higher. Actually, they probably need to be about there, and these could be just a tad higher. Not too well, perhaps a tad lower, actually, somewhere there. That's okay anyway, just rough, as I say. The other thing that I needed to do in the extrude here was to make sure that I had 11 subdivisions, because I needed to cut certain parts of this away to allow for arrows and indicators for the snakes that had won or drawn the race to be popping up out of the top. I mean, what I've got 5 technically banners, I suppose, that come out of the top of the scoreboard here. One to declare an overall winner. I've got another for a 2-way win, or a 2-way draw, I should say, a 3-way draw, a 4-way draw, and a 5-way draw, which I call an absolute slither. So they're indicated by the banners that pop up out of the top of the scoreboard. And then in this part of the scoreboard, during the 10 races, I've got 5 arrows. So I've got an arrow that will indicate the winner, or any combination of snakes in draw scenarios hidden away in here, and they leap up and do the indicating of the winners or the snakes that have drawn as need be. So that's how the scoreboard will ultimately work. In our next tutorial, we'll take things a little bit further and start looking at how we're going to develop this next part of our game here. And this is where things do gradually start to get pretty complicated. I mean, so far, yes, we've got quite a big expression that is quite a complicated one. You know, if we go back to tutorial 9 here and we open this up, yes, it is quite an expression, and it's still not 100% finished yet, but we do need to move away from this one for our next tutorial, and we'll be starting a new expression which will, as I say, help us to develop this scoreboard and what it can do, all the sort of wonderful things that it's able to do. And it is quite an involved one, but hopefully you'll enjoy developing it as much as I'll enjoy showing you how to develop it. And I'll see you in that tutorial very soon.